Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Rebels Compass. I'm really excited to have Guylene Rodrigue back with me from Modern Pioneering. We're talking about off-grid, and you can see the previous video on March 17th, or the very first video that we ever did. And I've had some conversations with friends over the last few years, and we talk about wanting a simpler life. But what does that really mean to you? Do you want a simpler life with less material things in your home because you've accumulated so much material possessions? Or do you want a simpler life to be off-grid? Or do you want to just disconnect from hydro and have solar panels? Well, Guylene is the girl to talk to. So I'm really excited that she's here today to, one, share that information, and two, to show us the progress of her off-grid home, a second off-grid home that she's building. So good morning, Guylene.
Good morning, Karen. How are you today?
I'm very, very well, thank you. I'm actually really excited to see the progress of your off-grid home, but also to find some answers to some of these questions. So if someone wants a simpler life, what kind of questions do you ask them?
Well, and that is I would say that's the first start for anyone who wants to consider to going off grid. It's what kind of living, what kind of lifestyle you want to do, because there's different level, degree of off grid. Do you want to go from the extreme where you're in the middle of the woods, where you do your own food, you're hunting, you have to do preservative, you have to really sustain yourself 100%, or you can go in the between, which some people likes to prefer a more urban style off-grid, or maybe a tie-grid system where it's kind of in the middle. So they don't rely only on their own skills and in their own knowledge about the system, but they also have support from the grid itself. So it all depends. That's the first questions, I would say. How comfortable you are. And first thing I always mention to people is you need to do some research. I had to do a lot of reading. I had to read on the technology, read on what's feasible, where you want to go, which area, region you want to go. One thing that definitely you need to consult is the bylaws, because unfortunately in Canada, there is some cities, counties that it's illegal to be off-grid. For example, in Ottawa, downtown urban Ottawa, you cannot go off-grid due to the lack of space. You cannot just put solar panel everywhere or even a wind turbine, because there is some bylaws that regulates the usage.
Oh, I never really considered that, but I guess so. So if you're living in the city and you want to become more self-sufficient or off-grid, then you seriously need to look at a more country setting.
Absolutely. You need to go in a more rural. Now, you don't need to go 2 hours or
in
very
the back and beyonds of nowhere.
Exactly. But there is some, you definitely would need to go in a more rural area to develop that type of lifestyle. Now, a lot of the people who have solar technology, especially in the urban core, they tend to be tie-grid. So it's they don't necessarily have the battery system. They don't have necessarily they rely on the system itself. So food, energy, and their skills. So for those, and it's it's a first thing that people has to really is to questions how they want to sustain themselves and how far they want to go. Obviously, you can do it by step. You can go do baby step. But definitely it's something that you have to rely. One thing that I also mentioned is, beside the bylaws and verified with the city, the county, It's to measure your level of energy usage per day.
And how would you do that?
So if you use, there is some information from your bills, so your hydro bills. I don't know if we can pull that hydro bill. I have an example, for example, the hydro one that we see right now. So I circle the average. So the basically the average, what they provide is either per month or per week, which you have to then calculate the average of energy usage that you're using per day. So that is a little bit more trickier, but that's something that people have to start to learn how much energy that someone is using per day, because that will depend the type of system or how big of a system you'll need down the road if you wish to pursue the total off-grid homesteading per se.
But I have a question about that. So if looking at that hydro bill, when we decide that we want to live off grid, would we consume the same amount of electricity as we did, say, in the city? Because maybe when we move into the country, we've gotten rid of a lot of things that we no longer need anymore. So does that just give you a guideline?
It's a guideline, and it's also give you the chance to adjust your lifestyle. Because going into an off-grid setting, there is some you have to consider your lifestyle. For example, a dishwasher. That is a very it's a lot of energy consuming, the dishwasher. So for example, my first home and my second home, I won't have any dishwasher. So you need to adjust what you're going to use and how differently you can use the system. The other part is your dryer. I will have a dryer, a clothes dryer. However, I'm using it differently when I'm off grid versus on the grid. So these are all techniques. These are all tricks that you're learning that you have to adjust. For someone who enjoy their building with power tool, for example. So that has to be taken in consideration. How would you provide that energy for someone who has a small business, a wood business, or on the side business, a garage type of mechanics? So you have to really analyze your lifestyle and how you can adjust it. And you reading, I've had a chance to read a lot of books in the past. The only thing I wish I could have done is to talk with someone like me,
excellent,
about how do I start and what do I need to know when I want to consider that lifestyle? Because there's a fair, there's a few things, as I mentioned. There's all the bylaws, so that might dictate where you, for example, purchase a piece of land, or depending where your land, if you do own a land, it's to get that information. So in terms of all the bylaws, what does exist? And then in terms of your lifestyle, the adjustment, what kind of adjustment do I need to do? And then you can push it and maybe you want to become or transition to a homesteading lifestyle. And the homesteading lifestyle, well, that's the total self-sufficient, where you do rely on yourself for all your food, energy, shelter, and everything. You become your someone that you're able to manage your lifestyle totally. So you don't rely on someone to come and for example, if your hydro there's a hydro power outage, well, then when there's something wrong with your system, you become the person who has to problem solve. So
I remember you saying on the first video that the only reason you knew that there was a power outage was that you lost connection to the internet because everything else still worked.
Exactly. I never knew when I had a power outage unless I had no more access to the internet, because all the tower are powered with the electricity. So that was the only way. So absolutely, it's interesting. Sometimes you get so much disconnect. You don't exactly what may happen sometimes around you.
I have a question. So just to briefly go back to what you mentioned a couple of minutes ago about a tide grid. So that means that you are connected to Hydro One, or what's the other company?
Hydro Ottawa.
Hydro Ottawa, or you have solar panels, right?
That's correct. That's correct. So a tide grid system, it's easier in a way to transition, because you don't basically you can use your power that you are producing, and the grid is your backup. So if your system has a problem, an issue, then your the backup grid will provide the electricity. So a lot of people prefer that stepping stone, because there's not as much maybe a learning curve in terms of the technology. You don't have to deal with batteries. There's a little bit of technology that you have to learn, and to accommodate yourself. There's a little bit of maintenance to do. However, I'm not an engineer, and I managed to learn all the various steps. I really went into the deep zone. I really plunged in the deep, because I went from an urban, fully power from the grid to a totally off grid with the batteries.
Initiation by fire, Guylene. Initiation by fire.
So I had no choice. I had to learn.
Yeah.
However, it's something that down the road is it's you have to prepare. There's and I'm saying to everyone, it's work. There is work involved. It's not like you're just turning off or on the switch and you enjoy life. There is some work involved. So if you go way back
to the pioneers,
to your pioneering, I mean, they were working a lot. I mean, they had no box stores, they had no Loblaws or Costco to go get their food and supply. They were their own self-sufficient. Now, mind you, we do have the modern side of it. So there's still places you can use the technology. So that helps you to live that lifestyle without going that far in time.
I know when I've had conversations, like I said, right at the very beginning, with people, when they say, oh, I just want a simpler life. I just want a simpler life. We have that right now. You know, like you say, at the flick of a switch, we have electricity. We push a button, we have a TV. You know, our food is frozen for us. We can go to the supermarket and buy pre-packaged food. You know, everything, we've become such a quick gratification kind of society, that this really is a deep passion, or a full transition into a more authentic life.
Absolutely. And you'll have, and myself, I had to learn a lot of skills that has been lost throughout generation, because we do have that simpler lifestyle in an urban setting. But the gratification is you get I don't know, I really enjoy doing a gardening. And when I'm talking about gardening, is vegetable gardening. You have the gratification to see the result of your work, and to enjoy the result of it down the road, and to do the canning, and I had to learn all those steps. There is, although it may look like a more hard work, it is more gratifying in terms of a lifestyle.
Yeah, I think right at the very beginning is probably extremely hard work. Like, say you have a whole set of new skills to learn. and you're going to learn by trial and error. However, that's where you come in, because you've done a lot of the trial and error and go, yeah, don't do this. Yes, do that. This is going to work better for you. You know, so anybody coming to you as a consultant has that security, if you like, that you have already done this and you have worked out a lot of kinks. And when they're working kinks out for themselves and not now doing it alone like you did.
Absolutely. And there is always, and I hope to be that person that will be able to guide them through their transition, because the other part also is choosing, is it to choose that lifestyle? Is it a necessity? Is it because you have a piece of land where there's no access to the power grid? Or is that's what you want to do? And then would be two different paths or two different processes. You have to take a lot going into a more if you're able to choose where there a piece of land where there's grid available, for example, then you might decide to go a tie grid system in the first step, as opposed as plunging into a totally off-grid system, as opposed as somebody who is in a, I don't know, a small cabin or tiny house in an area where there's no electricity. Then that's a much deeper step, because then you get to transition to the total off-grid part of it.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people said, well, what kind of house should I choose or pick? So there's gazillion of type of home. And again, that's in the part of where the people needs to reflect on what they wish and what it calls them. For me, I wanted to go, because you can go with an existing home and you do the transition, you do the renovation to become an off-grid, or you can decide and go with a new home or a new type of home, which that's what I decided. I decided to take a modular home, very urbanite type looking home, which I know that in terms of all the construction, it's up to date in the value of the energy value, and that's why I decided to go with the new build as opposed to an existing build. But there's various home. You don't need to go with a new build. There's, for example, there's Earthship. There's the
they're very cool. I've seen pictures of the Earthships, and I think Ben has pictures of those right now.
And there's the Yurt.
Yeah,
that is another very, very easy to low cost in terms of if you want. That's the area.
There's actually a gentleman in Kingston who builds yurts. He actually went to Mongolia to train how to build them, because Mongolian people live in these all year round, and their winters are worse in some areas than ours. So they really, really hold the heat, and they're absolutely stunning inside.
Yes, and very cost efficient in terms of building. It's very less compared to a traditional home. North American home. And then you have the tiny house. That's a trend that is really kicking in now. You have to I always mention to people, be careful about the tiny house. There's bylaws that do not accommodate tiny home at this present time. Now the cities are becoming more aware of the trend, and they will try, or they're starting to implement areas to accommodate communities of tiny home. Okay. But in Canada, you have to be very careful because of the weather. A lot of those tiny homes do not have necessarily what do you do with the water? What do you do with the sewage?
Oh, yeah.
These are all the component. You have to look for it.
So the tiny home, if you had property somewhere in the bush and back and beyonds of nowhere and Mosquito City, and you've had this land in your home, in your family for decades, and it's just overgrown and you don't know what to do with it, that'd be perfect for that.
Absolutely.
Because you could just clear a spot and put your tiny home there, and then come to you as a consultant and go, okay, now how do I get?
How do I go from there? Yes, absolutely. And that's probably a lot of those tiny homes that tend to end up in very low or rural, much rural area. Although there's a lot, the tendency, especially in I think it's a trend more in out west, where you get a lot of those tiny homes more in the urban setting. But again, it's not the case here in Ottawa, because you have to be aware of the system that needs to be supporting a tiny home.
Yeah, and also, so if you decide to go with a tiny home out in the bush, then you're dealing with all your batteries, I've mentioned. So when the winter comes, what would you do with that? Would you have to just unplug them all and close everything down and then come back to the urban life and then just go back and reset it up in the spring? How would that work? Or could you live there all year round?
And that's a question that has to be asked by the person who wants to go there. Is it going to be a full-time home?
Yeah.
Is it going to be a part-time, i.e. cottage type, shack in the woods for hunting, for just summer vacation? Because there is maintenance involved with the solar system. Absolutely. So, for example, in your the one that you just mentioned, somebody who wants to use it as a part-time for the summer, obviously you would have, for example, to disconnect the batteries, bring it home in your urban setting to maintain the battery, because you wouldn't be able to leave the batteries in the winter in a small tiny home or a small cottage or wood air home, because the batteries needs to be maintained over the winter. It has to be winterized, as opposed as a full-time home. If you're planning to be your main residence, then there is some maintenance to be done, and that's a learning process with us. When you do add batteries to your solar system, there is maintenance, absolutely.
Okay. So if somebody bought land and, say, for argument's sake, wanted to take a fifth wheel there, caravan, we call them caravans in England. I don't know what you guys call them, but we call them caravans in England. You could make that into an off-grid.
A lot of them already have off-grid systems, small panels.
Okay.
That they put it. But again, that's a part-time type of living space. You wouldn't necessarily be able to live all year round. We do have the challenge we have in Canada. It's weather.
Yeah.
You have to take.
That's why the yurts are really good, because they're already built for the weather, right?
That's correct. And we do a lot of, and I'll come down to the bylaws. A lot of the counties in smaller cities have bylaws that would require any homesteading to be either connected to a septic system or a well, if you plan to live on a full-time. Part-time is different because it would be considered as a cottage. So
then you could use a composting
system. Composting system. Some cottages don't have the well and running water, so the bylaws are different. So that's why it's important to verify the bylaws where you plan or where is your land, because that might dictate how far you want to bring your lifestyle to a totally off-grid, and do you want to live there full time, 100% of the time. Because that will dictate also the system, what you want to do, and what kind of off-grid, panel and how big the system you will need to have.
Okay, so when somebody contacts you and said, "Hey, Guylene, I'm really considering having a more authentic lifestyle. I want to go off-grid. I don't want to be connected to the system anymore." So you would have various consults with them. It wouldn't just be one.
No, that's correct. So initially I will need to sit down with them and have a conversation and see where having did to decide how they wish to go and what is their main goal, basically. Where what's their main goal? Is it just a temporary, a part-time type of home they want to have, or is it going to be their full-time places down the road? Maybe they're looking at retirement, and that's the next step of their life they want to take, which is going to be the case for me, by the way.
Yeah.
So it all depends. So yes, I need to have a conversation, a sit down, and we might have more than once consultation to bring them at speed on where they want to go.
Okay. So once they've come to you for a consultation initially, let's say for argument's sake, they already have the land. Yeah. So would you then, as the consultant that they have now contracted, go to the land with them and say, okay, this is where your home needs to be, this is the direction, do you go through all of those steps with them?
Yes, that's absolutely, I would definitely go on the land with them, making sure the orientation would be good and suggesting where they should locate the land, the house on the land, sorry.
Yeah.
And what kind of because obviously the panel, you have to consider the house positioning, you have to consider where you're going to put the solar panel. And believe it or not, the regulation has increased on solar technology in the last few years.
I can imagine. The more we want to do it, the more it's going to be regulated, right?
Everything is regulated. So yes, absolutely. That would be part of also the consultation. It's to go on location of the land and to do some recommendation, basically on how they should proceed, and go from there, because it's a multiple step. For sure.
Yeah. And then you have information on who to contract for work.
Absolutely.
Because I know from our previous conversation, the very first video you and I did together, I think you mentioned there that you had contractors that were excessively expensive, and you've since found out that you really didn't need to go that route.
That's correct. So absolutely. And you have to be comfortable. Like my first home, I hired a project manager, which, for me, for the first time, I had no idea how such a project can unroll. So I managed to hire the project management, but now I do the project manager.
So you're now the project manager.
I'm the project manager.
You were the person that you needed to find when you built your first home. And I think somewhere Ben has pictures of Guylene's very first home that she built.
Yes.
Out in Clayton,
Ontario. Yes.
Back and beyond of nowhere.
Yes. That was in what do we call the boonies.
Yeah, it was definitely the boonies, but beautiful home. When you walk into this, you had no idea that it was off grid. You had all the batteries in the basement, and like you say, it's a relationship with your home.
Absolutely. You learn how to live in that that place, and you learn how much wood you're going to cut every week, or every year, how much wood you will burn every year, and that depends if you're living part-time or full-time there. How to clean a house off grid. It's interesting, but it's
very different.
It's a different way of doing. Mind you, it's very easy, but it's just if you have a vacuum or that's another technology, the central vac.
Yes.
A lot of people love the central vac, but in a off grid home, that's not a technology that may.
It's not a necessity.
It's not a necessity. So you might have to do it with the good old broom, and
yes,
or a smaller, just a portable type of vacuum. But there is some adjustment. When I was talking about the adjustment, well, there's adjustment in the technology, and once the first day I stepped in that first home, I was in for a big eye-opening, because I learned a lot in just the first week.
I'm sure.
The first week, it's you learn the cycle of living with that particular homestead when you start
Well,
to
you're
live
going to
there.
learn the cycle of the seasons.
Yes, absolutely.
You're going to learn your living cycle and when you use more, when you use less.
Yeah.
But the other thing that living this way is massive personal empowerment, because now you are totally responsible for you.
Yes.
You're responsible for maintaining your home. You're
Mhm.
responsible for growing your own food. You're responsible for canning. You're responsible, and depending on how far you are out in the boonies, maybe you need to have the right medical
Knowledge base or
knowledge
training.
base.
Yep.
You know, so like you say, this is a big conversation to have with people to find out, you know, do they want to stay with the simple life that we have right now, where everything's provided and the grocery store and just nip in the car and away you go, or do you want the more authentic type of lifestyle?
It is. It's a big question that people should.
An exciting one, though.
Yes, personally, I'm not where I want to be because I would love to be a totally homesteading,
Mm-hmm.
which means to have livestock, which mean that. But having all that full time homesteading, you need to be at home 100% of.
You're working towards
I'm
that, though.
I'm working towards it,
Yeah.
and that's how it depends of how far you wish to take that lifestyle.
Yeah.
But definitely there's some activities I couldn't do, and I cannot do because I'm still working in the city in Ottawa.
Yeah.
So there's activities of homesteading I cannot do at this point.
Yeah. So, like you say, everything's an evolution and a learning curve. So, currently, you're building your now second home. And I believe we have video, if you want to walk us through the process of this video and what we're actually seeing.
Yes, so now we're coming up the driveway, and they actually completed the excavation of where the foundation will be for the garage and the home.
Mm-hmm.
So to the left, I think we'll see in a few seconds here, to the left, that's going to be the garage setting. So that's where the garage, and then we're just keep going, and the house will be to your right.
Okay.
That's so they finished the excavation this week. Foundation, the pouring of the footing and the wall should start next week. So it took time this year with all the rain we had.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of delays, but finally the project is moving along nicely this year. And we're targeting probably within the next, in 3 weeks, I would say, we should have a home.
So we'll have to get you back for that.
Absolutely. And maybe doing a live or on-site.
That would be fantastic.
And go through a bit of the process itself. So
Yeah.
no, it's definitely, even this is my second project, I'm still learning a lot. I'm still going through the learning.
You never stop learning, though. You know, right now, you know more than I do, and everybody else that's just deciding that they want to live that kind of a lifestyle. And you've learned through experience, through making the mistakes and failing forward. So, you didn't fail, you fail forward. You learn a new way to do that. You adapt, you find skills that you didn't have. You learn skills that you didn't have. So you constantly, that's life. We're constantly evolving.
Absolutely. And at the end, as I mentioned, that down the road, hopefully it's to become a totally 100% self-sufficient, but it's in progress.
Yeah,
I said it's in progress, and it's up to every individual to decide how far they want to take that lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I know you mentioned earlier, it's a modular home that you're building.
Absolutely.
Or having built, being delivered.
That's correct. So difference from my first home was like the traditional building on site. This time is a modular home, which I ordered through a company called Supreme Home. And they're building inside in they manufactured, and once the foundation is ready, they ship the home to the site. And the home is finished at about 85%.
Mm-hmm.
So once it's on site, there's some finishing touch, but the process is much faster than
Oh,
building traditionally on site.
yeah. And once they know you're going to be living off grid, then they build the home to your needs.
Absolutely. So they have to adjust the system. So what kind of furnace, heating system, hot water system? That's another another system to deal with. All these, like in any rural homes, they have to do. There's these the water filtration as well. So absolutely, for those who have an interest to modular home, you have to let them know in advance.
Yeah, you
That
can't just have one and then say, okay.
that's correct, because there is some adjustment to be done in term of the system with the house. So the sooner they know, the better they can adapt the house accordingly.
Yeah. What's really exciting for everybody with Guylene's modular home that within the next few weeks is actually going to be at her site is this is going to be a model home. So this home, you can contact Guylene at Modern Pioneering. We will post her details below. So if you have any questions, you can contact Guylene. If you're thinking of doing off-grid, contact Guylene. If you want to do a tied grid so that you're in the system and then use solar panels or whatever that you feel that is going to be for you, contact Guylene. But her home is going to be a model home that you can walk around, you can have a look at the battery system, you can see how everything works.
Yeah.
That's amazing, because that isn't, I don't think anybody else is doing that right now, are they?
To my knowledge, not in the Ottawa area, to have what we would call a model home.
Yeah, a show home.
A show home, like you can in the city, you can go and visit a home, a regular home. But within the Ottawa or Eastern Ontario, there's not many model home off-grid.
Completely off-grid.
Completely off-grid.
Yeah.
But yes, that's actually the service I wish I had in the first. But this time I want to be the.
So now you can be that for everybody else.
That one, absolutely, absolutely. So
this is really exciting. So we will be there to watch this happen. We will be there to walk around the home and to see each step as Guylene builds and creates her off-grid home that she will be living in full time. So this isn't just a show home that you can just poke around and have a look at. Guylene is going to live there full time. So she is opening her home to people to go and have a look around, to ask questions, and then book appointments if they are seriously looking towards doing this. And the other thing, we're going to be doing future videos of canning and what that looks like, you know, and
getting
medical. What would you do if you needed something and you was in the back and beyonds of nowhere, you know?
Absolutely. And I personally trained the first aid CPR. So I had every 3 years, I renew my certification. And I do that through my work. So I have some medical supply at home because what if there is an accident, or you cut yourself, or you're using a tool, then you need to be aware of this. Absolutely,
especially if you live
far away, and having a mode of communication if you need to have some help.
So CB radio or ham radio.
Ham radio. I'm a ham certified person as well, so I have my license. It's new. That's part of what I call the lifestyle, the change of lifestyle, and don't rely only on your cell phone, because sometimes there's no cell coverage, depending where you're going. So you need to have alternative communication system for sure.
Well, I'm excited for the up and coming conversations and the up and coming videos of watching this evolve into your home, and where we can actually go and have a look around.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to have whoever wants to come and learn and have the opportunity to see what it looks like, a real off-grid home.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to post your details below, Guylene, so that if anybody has any questions, they can contact you. If you have any questions below this video, please post your questions, because there may be a question that you ask that somebody else is wanting to ask, and Guylene can answer that for you. So please feel free to answer questions below and get your questions answered to the best of Guylene's ability without actually booking a consultation. And share this video, because people out there far and wide may be looking to go off grid and live that more authentic lifestyle. So having said that, I want to thank you, Guylene, for being here with me at Vocal House Studios again today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'll look forward to our next long conversation. I'm enjoying this and learning new skills that are out there for us. So with that, I want to thank Vocal House Studio for being here for us today. Have an amazing Canada Day weekend. And when you're out there enjoying the sunshine and looking at this amazing country we live in, maybe you'll give a thought to everything that you have, and whether you want a simple life, which we have, I believe, currently right now, even with the stuff that goes on in it, or do you want a more authentic life? And think about what that means for you. So have an amazing weekend, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.